I thought I knew intimacy, until one impulsive act shattered everything I believed about connection and trust. My husband's touch had once been my anchor, but now, I'm struggling to rebuild the bond we lost. Through vulnerability, passion, and raw honesty, I discover that true intimacy isn't about perfection. It's about bearing your soul, even when it's broken. This is my story of love, betrayal, and rediscovery. Before we dive into this powerful story, let us know where you're tuning in from. And if you find it compelling, don't forget to hit subscribe. The creek had always been my escape, a place where I could let the weight of everything I carried melt into the breeze. The gentle rush of water and the whisper of leaves above made it easier to breathe, to think, or sometimes to stop thinking altogether. I needed that today more than ever. My sneakers crunched against the gravel path as I walked, hands tucked into the pockets of my sweater. I come out here hoping to clear my head, but instead, my thoughts circled back to the same place they always did lately, Liam. It wasn't that we'd had a fight. We didn't fight much. Maybe that was the problem. The silence between us had grown so heavy it felt like a wall, and I couldn't find the right words to break through it. I kicked a pebble into the water, watching the ripples fan out and disappear. That was what our relationship felt like now, moments of impact fading into nothing. I loved him. I knew that much. But somewhere along the way, love had turned into routine. And routine had turned into this. The sun filtered through the trees ahead, casting dappled shadows on the path. I followed it around the bend, and that's when I saw it. In the middle of the meadow, a chestnut horse stood grazing, its coat gleaming in the late afternoon light like something out of a dream. For a moment I just stood there, frozen, watching the way the sunlight caught in its mane as it swayed in the breeze. It was beautiful, too beautiful for this quiet little field by the creek. I stepped closer, the wooden fence that bordered the meadow creaking softly as I leaned against it. The horse lifted its head and looked at me, and my breath caught. Its eyes were dark and deep, as though they held the whole world inside them. I felt a strange pull, like it could see me in a way no one else could. "Hey there," I murmured, feeling ridiculous for talking to a horse but unable to stop myself. It didn't move, just kept watching me with that calm, steady gaze. Something inside me shifted. I didn't know why, but I needed to get closer. Without really thinking, I climbed over the fence, my sneakers slipping slightly against the rough wood. When my feet hit the ground on the other side, the horse still hadn't moved. It just stood there, waiting. I approached slowly, my heart pounding for reasons I didn't fully understand. When I was close enough, I reached out a hand. My fingers brushed against its coat, and I inhaled sharply. It was softer than I'd expected, warm under my touch, and I felt something inside me soften too. The horse didn't pull away. Instead, it leaned into my hand, its eyes half closing as though it was just as curious about me as I was about it. I stroked its side, letting my hand move over its smooth coat, and for the first time in what felt like forever, the noise in my head quieted. It was just me and this horse, alone in the golden light of the meadow. No Liam, no silence, no heavy weight pressing on my chest. Just this moment. I didn't know how long I stood there, but the sun had dipped lower in the sky by the time I finally stepped back. The horse watched me go, its gaze calm and unwavering as I climbed back over the fence. The walk home felt lighter somehow, like I'd left something of myself behind in that field. I didn't know what it meant yet, what any of it meant, but I knew one thing for sure. Something had shifted and there was no going back. The next day I found myself walking the same path, my steps quicker than usual. I told myself it was just another stroll to clear my head, but deep down I knew better. My heart raced with anticipation as I approached the meadow, the memory of the horse's calm, steady gaze lingering in my mind. When I rounded the bend and saw the chestnut horse grazing in the same spot, my chest tightened. I felt a strange pull just like before, an invisible thread tying me to this creature that seemed to understand me without a word. This time I didn't hesitate. I climbed over the fence with practiced ease, my sneakers sinking slightly into the soft earth. The horse lifted its head and turned toward me, its dark eyes meeting mine. I smiled faintly, feeling the same inexplicable connection spark between us. "Hey," I murmured, stepping closer. The horse didn't move, just watched me with that same quiet patience. I reached out again, my hand brushing its coat, and a wave of calm washed over me. For a moment the world faded, leaving only the two of us in this golden meadow. I don't know how long I stood there, stroking the horse's side, letting my thoughts drift. It felt like hours and seconds all at once. Time didn't seem to matter here. All that mattered was the steady rise and fall of the horse's breath under my hand and the strange peace I found in its presence. Then I heard it, a sharp crack like a twig snapping underfoot. My head whipped around and there he was, Liam. He stood at the edge of the meadow just past the fence, his face a mask of shock and something far worse, betrayal. His hands were clenched into fists at his sides, his shoulders tense. "Emma," he said, his voice low and sharp. "What the hell is this?" I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. "Liam, it's not." I started, but he cut me off. "Not what it looks like," he snapped, stepping closer. "Because from where I'm standing it looks like you're... I don't even know what it looks like." "It's not like that," I said, my voice trembling. I felt connected to it. That's all. It's not about the horse, it's about me. Connected." He laughed bitterly, running a hand through his hair. "Do you even hear yourself right now? Connected to a horse? Are you serious?" I took a step toward him, my hands raised as though to calm him, but he backed away. "Liam, please. Let me explain." "Explain what?" he demanded, his voice rising. "That you've been sneaking out here to bond with a horse? What am I supposed to think, Emma? How am I supposed to process this?" "I don't know," I admitted, tears stinging my eyes. "I don't know what I'm doing, okay? I just know that something's been missing, and I don't know how to fix it." "That's your excuse?" His voice cracked and I saw the hurt in his eyes. "That you don't know how to fix yourself, so you do this?" "It wasn't about you," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Well, it sure feels like it," he shot back. "Because while you're out here, whatever this is, I'm at home trying to figure out why my wife doesn't talk to me anymore. Trying to figure out why it feels like you're a million miles away, even when you're standing right next to me." I didn't know what to say. How could I explain something I didn't fully understand myself? Liam shook his head, his jaw tightening. "You know what? Don't bother. I've seen enough." Before I could respond, he turned and walked away, his shoulders stiff, his strides quick. I stood there, my hands trembling, the tears I'd been holding back spilling over. The horse nickered softly behind me, but the sound only made the silence Liam left behind feel louder. I turned back toward the fence, my legs unsteady as I climbed over and headed home. The walk was heavier this time, each step sinking deeper into the weight of what had just happened. I didn't know how I was going to fix this, if I even could. All I knew was that I'd crossed a line, and the distance between Liam and me had just grown wider than ever. Liam didn't come home that night. The house felt emptier than usual, the silence stretching into the early hours as I sat curled up on the couch. I kept staring at my phone, willing it to light up with a call or a text, anything to break the awful stillness. But it didn't. My chest felt tight, my thoughts spiraling in a loop of what-ifs and regret. When I finally forced myself to go to bed, the weight of his absence pressed against me like a stone. Sleep didn't come, only the suffocating realization of just how badly I'd hurt him. The next morning I found a note on the kitchen counter. Liam's handwriting was scrawled across the page, the words cold and distant. "I need time. Don't call me." My stomach twisted as I read it. I wanted to scream or cry or do something, but all I could do was stand there, frozen. The ache in my chest grew sharper, spreading until it felt like it was consuming me. I'd never seen Liam like that before, so angry, so hurt. And it was my fault. Days passed in a blur of silence. Liam didn't call, didn't text. I tried reaching out once, but the call went straight to voicemail, and I couldn't bring myself to try again. The walls of the house felt like they were closing in on me, every room a reminder of him and everything we'd shared. I walked the creek path again, but even that felt different now, like the air had been drained from it, leaving only the hollow shell of what used to be my sanctuary. The horse was still there, grazing peacefully in the meadow, but I couldn't bring myself to go near it. I stayed on the other side of the fence, staring across the field as though the distance might somehow undo everything that had happened. After another sleepless night, I realized I couldn't keep going like this. I couldn't fix things with Liam if I didn't understand why I'd done what I did. Why I'd felt such a pull toward that horse, toward the escape it represented. I needed help. That was how I found myself sitting in a cozy office across from Dr. Patel, a therapist whose kind eyes and calm voice felt both reassuring and unnervingly disarming. "Why do you think you're here, Emma?" she asked, her pen poised over a notepad. I stared at her for a moment, unsure of where to begin. The question was deceptively simple, but the answer felt impossibly complicated. "Because I ruined everything," I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. She didn't react right away, letting the silence settle between us. When she spoke again, her tone was even gentle. "Let's start with why you think you ruined everything. What happened?" I hesitated, the words tangled in my throat, but I couldn't keep them inside anymore. Slowly, haltingly, I began to talk. I told her about Liam, about the horse, about the overwhelming sense of emptiness that had led me to that meadow in the first place. "It wasn't about the horse," I said, my voice trembling. "It was about, I don't know, feeling something. Anything. I've felt so numb for so long. And I didn't know how to fix it." Dr. Patel nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Numbness often comes from ignoring our emotions for too long," she said. "It sounds like you've been carrying a lot of unresolved feelings, Emma. Have you talked to Liam about any of this?" "No," I admitted, tears stinging my eyes. "I didn't know how. And now it's too late. He's gone, and I don't know if he's ever coming back." "That doesn't mean it's too late," she said gently. "But before you can rebuild that connection with Liam, you need to understand your own feelings. Let's start there." The sessions were hard. Dr. Patel asked questions I didn't want to answer, peeling back layers I'd buried for years. I told her about the restlessness I couldn't shake, the way I'd felt invisible in my own life, let alone my marriage. She helped me see patterns I hadn't recognized, the ways I'd shut down instead of facing my emotions, the fears I'd let control me. As the weeks passed, I started to feel like I was piecing myself back together bit by bit, but every time I thought about Liam, the knot in my chest tightened. I wanted to reach out to him, to tell him everything I was learning, but I was terrified of how he'd respond. What if he didn't care? What if I'd already lost him for good? I didn't have the answers, but one thing was clear. I couldn't move forward without facing what I'd done. And that meant facing Liam. Calling Liam was the hardest thing I'd ever done. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the phone as I stared at his name on the screen. Dr. Patel's words echoed in my mind. "You can't control how he responds, but you can control what you say. Be honest, Emma." I hit the call button before I could lose my nerve. The line rang once, twice, 3 times, and then clicked. "Emma." His voice was clipped, guarded. "Liam," I said, swallowing hard. I know this is the last thing you want to hear from me, but I need to talk to you. Please." There was a long silence, and I held my breath, waiting. Finally, he sighed. "What do you want?" "I miss you," I said, my voice trembling. "I miss us. And I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to know that I'm trying to understand what went wrong. What I did to push us to this point." "What you did?" he said, a bitter edge creeping into his tone. "Do you even know?" "Yes," I said quickly. "I do. I crossed the line, Liam, and I hurt you. And I'll never forgive myself for that. But I can't fix this without you." Another silence. I could hear his breath on the other end, slow and measured, as though he were considering what to say. Finally, he said, "I don't know if I can do this, Emma. Not after everything." "Please," I whispered. "One chance. That's all I'm asking." He let out a long, heavy sigh. "I'll think about it." Liam's answer wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. It gave me a sliver of hope to cling to, and I threw myself into therapy with more determination than ever. I wanted to be ready for whatever came next, to show Liam that I was serious about changing. Not just for him, but for myself. Weeks later, when he finally agreed to a joint session, I was both relieved and terrified. Seeing him again felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, unsure whether I'd fall or fly. Liam sat stiffly on the edge of the couch in Dr. Patel's office, his arms crossed over his chest. He didn't look at me, his gaze fixed somewhere on the floor. The distance between us felt enormous, even though we were only a few feet apart. "Thank you for coming, Liam," Dr. Patel said, her tone warm but professional. "I know this isn't easy." "I'm not here for me," he said flatly. "I'm here because Emma asked me to be." The word stung, but I bit my lip and stayed quiet. This wasn't the time to push. Dr. Patel nodded, unruffled. "That's a valid starting point. Liam, can you share what's been on your mind since everything happened?" He let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. "What's been on my mind? That I don't even know who my wife is anymore. That every time I close my eyes I see her standing in that field, and I can't make sense of it. Of her." His voice cracked on the last word, and my heart twisted. "Liam," I began. But he held up a hand to stop me. "No," he said sharply. "You don't get to talk right now. This is my turn." I sank back into the couch, my hands twisting in my lap as he continued. "I've spent weeks trying to understand how we got here," he said, his voice tight with emotion. "Trying to figure out why you didn't come to me. Why you couldn't just tell me how you were feeling instead of whatever the hell that was." "I didn't know how," I said softly, unable to stay silent. "And I didn't know what I was feeling, Liam. I was lost." "That's not an excuse," he snapped, his voice rising. "Do you have any idea what it felt like to see you like that? To feel like I didn't even know you anymore?" "I know," I said, tears spilling down my cheeks. "And I hate that I made you feel that way. But I'm trying to change, Liam. I'm trying to be better." For a moment, the room was silent except for the sound of my shaky breathing. Then Dr. Patel spoke, her tone calm but firm. "Liam, it sounds like you're carrying a lot of pain and confusion. That's understandable. But can you tell Emma what you need from her right now?" He hesitated, his jaw tightening. "I need to know that this isn't just temporary," he said finally. "That she's not going to fall apart again the next time things get hard." "I promise you, Liam," I said, my voice steady despite the tears. "This isn't temporary. I'm working on myself every single day. And I'll keep working no matter what." The session ended without any clear resolution, but it was a start. Liam didn't say much as we left Dr. Patel's office, but he didn't walk away either. That had to mean something. Over the next few weeks we continued therapy together. Some sessions were explosive, filled with anger and tears. Others were quieter, more introspective. Slowly we began to peel back the layers of everything we'd been holding back for so long. One afternoon during a particularly emotional session, Liam surprised me. "You think you're the only one who felt invisible," he said, his voice breaking. "I've been carrying the weight of this marriage, trying to hold it together while you pulled away. And I didn't know how to reach you." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. "I'm so sorry, Liam," I said, my voice trembling. "I never meant to make you feel that way." "I know," he said quietly. "But knowing doesn't make it easier." As the days passed, Liam began to soften, though he remained cautious. I poured my heart into showing him I was serious, not with words but with actions. Little by little, the walls between us began to crack, and I started to believe that maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. The next therapy session was different. I could feel it in the air as soon as Liam and I walked into Dr. Patel's office. He was tense, his shoulders rigid, his gaze fixed firmly on the floor. I wasn't sure what had changed, but I knew this wasn't going to be easy. Dr. Patel greeted us with her usual calm demeanor. "Good to see you both," she said, her voice warm but professional. "How are we feeling today?" "Fine," Liam muttered, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. "Liam," she said gently, "it seems like there's something on your mind. Would you like to share?" He let out a sharp breath, his jaw tightening. "What's on my mind?" "I'm tired, Dr. Patel. I'm tired of feeling like I'm the only one holding this together. Like it's all on me to figure out how to trust Emma again. How to move past what happened. I'm exhausted." His words cut through me, but I couldn't argue. He was right. I'd hurt him. And now he was the one bearing the brunt of it. "I understand," Dr. Patel said, her tone even. "It sounds like you're carrying a heavy burden. Would it help to talk about what trust means to you? What you need from Emma to feel like you can rebuild it?" Liam shook his head, his voice rising. "I don't even know anymore. Every time I think about what happened, it's like It's like it's burned into my brain. I can't unsee it. I can't stop wondering if it's going to happen again. It won't, I said quickly, my voice trembling. Liam, I swear. Swearing doesn't mean anything to me right now, Emma. He snapped, cutting me off. I don't know how to believe you. I felt tears sting my eyes, but I forced myself to keep going. I know I can't undo what I did, and I know I broke your trust, but I'm doing everything I can to show you that I'm serious about changing. I'm not asking you to forgive me overnight, Liam. I'm asking you to give me a chance. His jaw tightened and he looked away, his silence heavier than any words. Dr. Patel stepped in, her voice calm but firm. Liam, it's clear that this has been incredibly painful for you. And Emma, I can see how much you want to make things right. But rebuilding trust is a process. It's not something that happens all at once. It takes time and it takes consistency. Are you both willing to continue that process, even though it's hard? Liam hesitated, his hands clenching into fists. I don't know, he said finally. I don't know if I have it in me. The session ended without resolution, and the drive home was silent. Liam didn't speak, and I didn't dare push him. When we got back to the house, he went straight to the bedroom, closing the door behind him. I stayed in the living room, my heart heavy. I didn't know how much more I could take. Every step forward seemed to lead to 2 steps back, and the weight of my guilt felt unbearable. I wanted to fix this, to fix us, but I couldn't do it alone. And I couldn't force Liam to meet me halfway. A few days later, something unexpected happened. Liam came into the kitchen while I was making coffee, his expression hesitant. I've been thinking, he said, his voice low. I turned to face him, my heart racing. About what? About us. About everything. He leaned against the counter, his gaze meeting mine for the first time in what felt like weeks. I'm not ready to forgive you, Emma, but I don't want to give up on us either. Relief flooded through me, and I had to blink back tears. Liam, I'll do whatever it takes. I mean it. He nodded slowly. Then we keep trying. But I need time. And I need you to be patient with me. I will, I said, my voice trembling. I promise. The next day Liam surprised me. Come with me, he said, grabbing his jacket. Where? I asked, confused. You'll see, he replied, his tone unreadable. We drove in silence, the tension between us palpable. When he pulled over near the creek, my chest tightened. I hadn't been back here since everything happened, and I wasn't sure I was ready. Liam climbed out of the car and I followed, my heart pounding. He led me down the familiar path to the meadow, where the horse had stood that first day. It wasn't there now, but the memory of it was vivid enough to make my throat tighten. This is it, isn't it? Liam said, his voice quiet. I nodded, unable to speak. He turned to face me, his expression softer than I'd seen in weeks. I don't understand what happened here, he said. I don't know if I ever will. But if this is where it started, then maybe this is where we start too. Tears spilled over as I reached for his hand. Liam, thank you. He squeezed my hand gently, his gaze steady. Don't thank me yet. We've got a long way to go. The days after our walk to the creek were quieter, but different. There was a cautious openness between Liam and me, like a window crack just enough to let the air in. We weren't okay, not yet, but for the first time in months it felt like we could be. Therapy sessions continued, and they were just as challenging as ever. Some days we made progress, sharing pieces of ourselves that had been hidden for years. Other days we argued about what had happened, about who we'd become, about the long, hard road ahead. But even the arguments felt productive, like we were finally saying the things we'd been too afraid to say before. One evening, after a particularly raw session, we sat together on the porch. The sunset painted the sky in shades of gold and pink, the kind of beauty that made everything else feel small. Liam leaned back in his chair, his arms crossed loosely over his chest, his gaze fixed on the horizon. I've been thinking about what Dr. Patel said, he said suddenly, breaking the silence. I turned to him, my heart pounding. Which part? He sighed, running a hand through his hair. About forgiveness. About how it's not something you just decide to do. It's something you work toward. And I think I'm ready to start. Tears filled my eyes as I reached for his hand. Liam, you have no idea how much that means to me. He gave me a small sad smile. Don't get too excited. I'm still angry, Emma. I still hurt. But I see how hard you're trying. And I want to believe we can find our way back to each other. We can, I said, my voice trembling. I'll do whatever it takes, Liam. Promise. The days turned into weeks, and little by little we began to rebuild. It wasn't easy. There were moments when Liam pulled away, when the weight of everything felt like too much. But there were also moments of hope, small but powerful reminders of the love that had brought us together in the first place. We started spending more time together, not just talking but really listening. I learned to be patient, to let Liam process his feelings without pushing him. And Liam began to trust me again, slowly but surely. One afternoon, Liam surprised me by suggesting we go back to the meadow. I think it's time, he said, his tone calm but firm. I nodded, my chest tightening. Are you sure? Yeah, he said. If we're going to move forward, we need to face it. The drive was quiet, the tension thick in the air. When we reached the creek, we walked the familiar path together side by side. The meadow was just as I remembered, golden and peaceful, the kind of place that felt untouched by time. The horse wasn't there, but its presence lingered in my mind. This is where it all started, Liam said, his gaze sweeping over the field. And where it ends? I froze, my heart pounding. What do you mean? He turned to face me, his expression serious but not unkind. I mean, this is where we leave it, Emma. The guilt, the anger, the betrayal, it stays here. I'm not saying I'll forget, or that it won't still hurt sometimes, but I can't keep carrying it. We can't. Tears streamed down my cheeks as I nodded. I don't want to carry it anymore either. Liam stepped closer, his hand brushing against mine. Then let's move forward. Together. That night, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, I felt a flicker of hope I hadn't dared to feel in months. Liam turned to me, his expression softer than I'd seen in a long time. I want you to know something, he said. I'm not doing this for you, Emma. I'm doing this for us, because I think we're worth it. We are, I said, my voice steady. And I'll never stop proving that to you. The months turned into years, and though the scars of what happened never fully faded, they became part of our story. Therapy taught us how to communicate, how to listen, and how to rebuild the trust we'd lost. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when the past threatened to creep back in, but we faced it together. One evening, as we sat by the creek with the sun dipping low on the horizon, Liam reached for my hand. I think we're going to be okay, he said, his voice quiet but sure. I smiled, feeling the warmth of his touch. I know we are.